Hi, I'm Roger O'Halloran, and I am here today with Guida Cabrita, and
Maybe.
we're going to record the very first session of Meet a Palm. Meet a Palm's teacher. In fact, Guida spent some time in Timor Leste with Palms and was teaching there, was trying to assist the mentoring of teachers there and generally build the capacity of a small primary school in a community just outside Dili, the capital. Peter, tell me a bit more about that story. How did you get to decide that you were going to do this in the first place?
I'd heard about palms in 2009 when I was researching about wanting to volunteer. And I was a bit taken aback by the 2 year, 1 year placements. And I went on a year's leave and I did what I later learnt to was called voluntourism. I I did little 1 2 week 1 month stints in different places, including Swaziland um, and South Africa, and I realised that uh, in that gap year, 2010, that there was something missing from the volunteer experience. That it was good for me, and it made me feel really great, and I thought that I was learning about their culture, but I soon realized that how I was going about it wasn't actually great for the communities in the long term. And the key snapshot from all those years ago was holding the hand of a girl as I walked around with her in the playground, and she had a pink jumper. And I found out that that was always her pink jumper. That was what she always wore. And I remember thinking, I'm here for only a few weeks, and in a few weeks' time, you're going to go and meet somebody new. And I thought that's not right. You're as a school teacher, so I'm a school teacher. I've been trained as a primary teacher. I know that kids at that age should be developing wonderful relationships with their teachers for longer periods of time, and that helps them to grow. And she was already an orphan. She's lost her relationship with her family, and here she is just meeting do gooder like Aussies and English people and people from America just for 3 weeks, and it's good. It's a positive thing, but it's not the best thing. And I thought there has to be something a bit better than just that. So I remembered Palms, and I felt like I wanted, after I started working again after my gap year, I started wanting to really give of my time. I didn't have a family, and I didn't have a partner at the time. And I thought, I'm just working for money. And at the moment, that's not actually what I'm feeling called to do. I just want to work, but I don't need the money, and I don't necessarily um, feel that this is the place I need to be at. So I remembered that, well, Palms did it a different way, and I started to investigate that different way. So I thought that could be the better, more sustainable answer to this longing that I had to go and work, but um, but not to do what I now understood was more harm at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. We've had a few refugees from volunteerism actually, and it's interesting because, as you say, it enlightens people a little more, but perhaps it doesn't do too much for the supposed beneficiaries on the other end. We're not really clear about what it does for them in the end, I suppose. Of course, the volunteerist companies often work for a profit, and will argue that it does a whole lot for them.
Mm.
Because they want their customers to keep believing that they can accomplish a lot in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think what you've just said, and what most of those that have come across to us from that experience say, is exactly the same. So that's fascinating. It's also interesting to me in 2009, so about the same time as you're talking about, we were just completing a piece of research with Palms people who'd been away from 2006, and they were monitored over the period to find out whether they felt they were really achieving anything in their placements, any of the goals that we hope to achieve in those longer term placements. And because we'd noted that over time, people's evaluations were telling us that they felt like they just learned so much more than they gave still. And there's not, I think, any one person that's come back that hasn't said that. And we wanted to find out if there were things, though, that they thought they had been able to do. And we were reasonably satisfied enough to continue, but still to make some adjustments to the program to enable that to happen even further. So you would have been, once you went away with Palms, what year was that?
Well, I did an encounter in 2012, and then
Yeah.
the implementation in 2013, went away 2014.
Right. So we would have been at that period of time where we're trying to adjust the program to improve the outcomes for beneficiaries in placement. And we know that there are still challenges to that. You had a few challenges to that. I had a look at your evaluation again recently, and some of the challenges in terms of building capacity. And I think you mentioned in particular, in a very Western way, maybe not what can be achieved very quickly. How did that go for you?
So I should go no further before saying that I wasn't doing it by myself. I was working alongside a fellow volunteer, Samantha Haddon, and so together we faced some of those challenges, those realizations. Some of the realizations, the key ones, are the idea that when you see something that needs to be done and the answer is clearly there for you, and as you can see the step A, and you can see where step Z is, and you can see where you need to go. But and luckily we'd done the orientation course, which helped us to know that although we see step A and all the way to step Z, if we don't find out what other people are seeing as their step A, we're not going to get we can get to step Z, and then it will fizzle when we leave. So we were able to, one key example is we wanted to look for some resources in a library, and we saw that they had a backroom library, and it was full of resources from the government, and they were proudly stored, but the cupboards, there were wooden cupboards, and there was lots and lots of resources. It was quite overwhelming to see what was there, but also still stored, not being used. And the teacher, the Western teacher in me, is like, let's bring these all out. Let's use them because this is amazing. Let's just start using this, because at that point they weren't being used. But we took a step back, Sam and I, and we talked with the teachers about things, and eventually it was the teachers that themselves that were organizing to cut a long story short, those little chats that we had about, well, what could we, how could, there are so many great resources, like but they're a bit tricky to get to with the cupboards and things. And eventually the teachers had made a little set of like shelves. They'd brought out some of the books that they'd wanted to use, and the kids were helping them sort out the books that they were going to use. And it wasn't the way that, they weren't all taken out, but they were being, eventually some kind of a library system was evident. It wasn't the library system, and that wasn't our essential job, but that wasn't the library system we might have thought, but it was one that the students and the teachers were working together to make. And that was, but if we had just said, we'll do it, and we put it all together, which is what, to be honest,
you were very tempted to do.
Very, very tempted to do, but then we knew that would not be it. And that was the hard bit, taking that, when you see the clear path, but you have to have well, first the respect and the understanding that these people know that there are books in there, and they use them when they want, and they have a system already, and it might not be our system, but it's organized and the way that has that they have chosen, and yes, they recognize that it wasn't they weren't utilizing them the way they did, and they made it work for them, and
Okay.
that was the
Some interaction between you and your local colleagues did
yeah.
prompt some thought about how resources might be used.
Yeah, and it wasn't us telling them. It was
Didn't
just
follow it.
lots of this, lots of just chats and
Yeah.
and questions and finding out. And another example is there was a Professor Ananda. She it started with her inviting us into her classroom and us bringing something to use in the classroom that was a little bit different than the ordinary resource, and that got the attention of other teachers, because we were given set classes and people to work with, and that was happening, but the mentoring of the actual teachers in the early stages was still something we were developing. How was that going to look like? Right now, at the beginning, it looked like an English lesson with the teachers. That's the very beginning. And at the end, it looked like going into teachers' classrooms and team teaching with them. But to get from what the community originally envisioned us to do to something that would then hopefully be something that would be more sustainable and also more educationally worthwhile, then there were lots of little steps, and one of the key steps was simply just starting small. We started with one teacher who took an interest in sharing teaching strategies and inviting us into a room. That then got the attention of other teachers, and then they said, well, actually, yes, maybe you can come into our rooms too. And then eventually that it went like this, but that didn't happen overnight. And to know, whereas in Western society, you bring a person in from a consultant, and there's a timetable for them to work as efficiently as possible in as shortest amount of time as possible to get to every teacher and just empty their knowledge.
And the teachers are sort of receptive to it because that's what they're expecting to happen.
Exactly.
But you're going into a cross-cultural situation where none of these people are actually trained teachers, as I understood it. I mean, they were people who volunteered to help teach, and they were using methodologies that they'd sort of come across when they were students in a classroom, and nothing had changed. So rote learning and all of those things were happening. And students were expected to copy out into their books whatever the teacher wrote on the board, and that was learning.
It was a time of transition too, because the Timorese government had just instigated with the Portuguese and some Australian teachers a new curriculum that resembled the Western curriculum. But teachers were still, some teachers later started going to college, university, and taking that. But at that, when we first came,
and you were the first people of teachers from any other place than Timor. You were the first Europeans or Westerners or with teacher training going into the school.
Yeah.
So even they were learning how to host you.
Yeah.
They'd never hosted anyone before. They weren't sure what they were meant to do.
They did very well.
And we've sent people there since, and and we've sent people there since. I think who followed you a year later. So, Peter, and been in another placement. So they'd both had the experience of being away before and doing this work before, and the predecessors in the placement, yourself and Sam. So what you established was a basis for progress, as well as, made progress yourself. So that's always going to be a factor as to how I guess frustrating it can be, and how you need to take a step back, as you mentioned, to say, okay, what's the real context here? I've got to understand the context. And it is why we say you take at least 6 months to do that. I remember you guys saying, I think it's 12 months, Roger, or something.
Yes.
Sam might have said to me. And it was in the second year. And this is why we say go away for 2 years, because it's in the second year that things start to move. People have trusted you. They've come to know you. That you're part of the community. So it's, yeah, that's a great explanation of it. Thanks,
It
Guida.
can be scary to, I remember thinking, it can be scary to think 2 years, but
Yeah,
when you're
it is.
in there, you, I remember saying to Sam, I'm just so grateful we have this second year,
Yep.
because we really felt that that's when things became clearer to us as well. Like, and we felt that was a blessing that we decided to do 2 years instead of just one. But at the time back in Australia, you think it's a long time, but it's the needed time, I believe,
Well,
if not more.
you know, as I said, had a look at your evaluation after your first 6 months, and one of the things that you do highlight as and you kind of rate very highly is the opportunities you had in that time to get involved in community life. You mentioned Timorese cooking lessons and visits to the local warong or restaurant, church events and meetings, and visiting the sick and playing with children. Tell me a bit more about those things and how they helped you to, better kind of integrate into the community.
Before I went to Timor, I knew I needed to learn the language,
Mm.
and I studied before I went, but I knew that there was so much more to learn than just the words, and so although I was able to go to a market and ask for what I needed, I it was more than that. Being when we went, it's important to explain. When we went, we were so well hosted that they really took us under their wings. They made sure that when we arrived, we were given a towel with some soap and a toothpaste, and Sam and I were sharing a room, and we felt so welcomed and so so warmly welcomed just at that, even those first few days. One of the memories I have is of a boy who had been living with the priests, and he Sam will have this memory too. He was hiding under a box as a joke next to our window, because our room at the time, it's not there quite like that anymore in that area, backed onto a children's, like, it was the children used to play. There was a bit of a fish pond, and they used to play with rocks and things, and we heard this little voice coming from under a box, and it was kind of our first interaction with any of the Timorese children. And we joked, we thought, well, who is what's this? And we pretended, and even though we didn't, and Sam at that time was learning the language, like still beginning as well. So we kind of had fun with joking around without such a depth of language still. It was that slapstick humor, like there's a boy under a box, and we were able to have fun without language as much. And he kind of grew quite like he and his friends, but him in particular, because he lived with the priest, we had a lot of fun together. We learnt. He showed us around like that was our first few weeks being shown around the church by the kids. Kind of the Mana Apollonia, the lady that worked for the priest, helping us to know when meal times were, helping us to navigate like what we could do, how we where we could shop, what was the good price for bananas, like those little things. We were so that was the beginning, and then it just as we moved from that room to our house, then they wanted that they built for us,
Yeah.
um, and that the young men in the community built for us. Like it was very much in the church that built that house. We were very it
Right next to the church.
right next to the church, next to the hall,
Yeah.
And there was helping to teach us how to wash the clothes. There were lessons to teach us how to cook with the Timorese food. There was just a feeling that we were not by ourselves, even though we had moved, even though we moved from the priest's house, and we knew that anytime we could just ask, and there was going to be we never felt we were given our space, but at the same time, if I needed help with something, I know I just had to go outside and there would be somebody to ask something. But they took us under their wings, and even when there were problems if there were little if there was any issue, as happens in communities, sometimes there might be a little issue. The community came and sat with us.
Mm-hmm.
The priest came and sat with us while that happened, so that we knew everything's fine. And we're not alone.
I have experience of living in a similar compound type life, and at first I was a little bit disturbed by it. I mean, there was a fair bit of noise. People were very interested in you, and they could very much see every movement you made when you left your building and went back into your building. All eyes seemed to be on you. It was kind of disturbing, but it was also kind of wonderful to have what you explained as the sort of community around you that were able to just sit down with you, chat with you, play with you. You know, it's quite a different experience than we have in our individual homes in Australia. So it's something to get used to, but it is part of that building relationship in the community.
If you wanted to be like that, they left you. Everybody needs their time. If
Yeah.
you wanted that time, you could get it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever needed to be, if you wanted, if you were feeling able, and like there was always, it was never not there. It was always freely. You could go as much. You could go as deep as you wanted. Basically, there was always someone to talk to, someone to. There was never a, and so we, as teachers, like sometimes you do just need to have a moment. But it was never. You never felt. Even I was sick in Timor, and they even found where I was staying, and they wanted to cook giant meals for me, and the people even found where I was staying, and so I always felt very like, and this is not just the rainbow colored glasses memory, but I really felt truly in those moments of difficulties very much loved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of being loved, I mean, is being a little bit vulnerable, to be in a situation where you need care, and people then show it to you. And I think too, with what we've found, I don't know you might comment on this, is that this is what starts to build the trust that enables you then to become the mentor to others, or to so that it works both ways. You being willing to learn and willing to put yourself in others' hands then makes them more willing to do the same.
Yeah, and I think one of the team teachers, her name is Senora Marisa, and being away from home, coming to the end of a placement, I met my, as you know, and you came to my wedding, met my husband in East Timor, but he's from Finland. He was traveling,
Yeah.
and when he left, I think I got a little bit down. And I think some of the community may have noticed. They laughed and they said, "Where is this person?" Like everybody kind of knew that it was something. And one of the teachers who I was working with educationally, so we were working in her, I think she was year one class, and that was really something. I had great experiences talking with. I feel like that was one of the experiences, I think, that was very much a negotiation of ideas and sharing. It was not just, it was very, I feel she really, we were good partners, more teaching partners towards the end. She was able to give me, she was able to be like spiritually, like emotionally,
Yeah.
a support. And I remember her speaking to me in Tetum about how she found her strength in her life.
Yeah.
Because she was a busy mum, she was a teacher, she used to be a nurse, and how she found that strength. And she was giving, and I remember her, just from our partnership, she saw the everyday, and she gave me her wisdom, and I always remember thinking, yeah, I'm learning so much from you through teaching as well, but also as a fellow woman, as a fellow human being. And I remember thinking, this is maybe what the Palms mission is like. When you're working in solidarity, you're seeing every side of the person,
Yep.
and you're supporting every side of that person. And I really felt supported in that way.
Yeah, it very much is. I mean, what Palm's mission is about. There are many communities, and another one in Timor, for example, in Atabay, where we've had a number of people working over a number of placements,
Mm.
have said to us, one of the greatest things that they've got from it is nothing to do with the work. It was to do with the relationship they had with the person and with the worldview that person brought to their community. And of course, you get the worldview they have shared with you, and you're able to take that home. Although we haven't, I think, been as successful um, in engaging the Australian community with those worldviews that perhaps are going to be useful for Australians to give more consideration to. And did you have any? I haven't heard of any experiences you had like that.
I have probably not had the opportunity to share with
Mm.
you about that due to life. I've been, because I'm a teacher, and I'm not tied to the classroom role anymore as an ESL teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That's given me a chance to be seen maybe as someone who is a little bit more culturally aware,
Ah,
even though I'm still learning so much every day.
okay, yeah.
So because of that, then they maybe ask questions. One of the things that I've done is, there's been a mission day at one of the schools I used to teach, and they wanted to do it on East Timor.
Okay.
And I was able to talk to the children um, about Palms's philosophy, and give that message that it's not really just about giving. Sometimes we can give money, but
Yep.
sometimes we can also give our time, and sometimes people can also give their skills. And to let them know that the children that they're helping are just children like them, with different situations and different experiences, and maybe slightly different needs based on where they live, but they are children essentially like them. There
Yeah.
are teachers essentially like the teachers at their school, and that sometimes people can work together. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just about giving money or giving things, because sometimes the schools would say, we have a truckload of things that we just want to give. I said, well, those things are actually available. And I was able to, the exciting part for me was to be able to be given a forum to say to large groups, those things are available in the communities that you're giving them to.
Mm.
But there are other ways
Mm.
that perhaps are more sustainable, not to put, and to be careful to respect the intention behind the giving.
No, people do it with the best of will. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Mm.
so to find a way to say that we understand and they understand why this happens, and sometimes it does come, sometimes the plastic chairs that arrived in the container were used,
Yeah.
but there are people that make chairs and sell chairs into.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the other thing that we worry about sometimes with this too is that, I mean, I remember one of our African partners saying to us that they were very upset that one of our participants there, who was a nurse, decided that she would raise funds back home to build a birthing centre. But
Right.
she didn't consult anybody at the hospital that she was working at, and he was very angry about this because he said we've just overcome this whole cargo cult mentality that creates dependence on the kind of things coming from elsewhere, and we've just overcome people realizing that there's a great more in life if you do these things yourself, that you've got a great more experience out of it, and you great more satisfaction, and it makes them more active and engaged, and really taking on all aspects of life. I suppose live life to the fullest is the maxim that stands behind that idea. And so I it she raised thousands, but he wasn't happy with it. So it's an interesting thing that we think it's important because we're told all the time, I suppose, by charities here that they want money to pay for this or pay for that, or to without us really probably thinking too much about how they're spending it. And I guess it's just money. They need stuff,
Yeah.
I want to give. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there are infrastructure things that can be, but as well, and out of like respect to Bedois, I won't go into all of those things, but I think there are some times that people can see, look, this isn't available here, and
Mm.
this would be something, and is out of our reach, out of our means. But in terms of everyday skills and the things that people do every day, like so whether it's medicine or teaching or business skills, those are things that money can't. You can have the computer, but if there's somebody that's not working to learn, then it's not got, and it can sit nicely in a room, but if when it breaks, that's the end of it. It just becomes but I must admit, that's an area that the priest in Bedois is very forward thinking, and did look for ways to upskill the youth and the community in those areas. So that's an area of strength in that he sought ways to help those children get those skills to.
If they get those skills and they go on to work and they are able to be employed and earn income, that's sustainable.
Yes.
It's a little boost along the way to bring about that sort of more self-determination, if you like. Just a little input here and there can achieve that. We've got to be very careful, I guess, about analysing what the things are that we want to send people and work out that they're really going to be sustainable before we just sort of launch into it from our perspective as to what they do. Which is something we always want to address. And I think people in the field like yourself is how we can sort of explore those things when you come home. You've done what we'd hope to help to educate the Australian population about how that works.
I'm feeling called to say one thing.
Yeah.
There was a very old priest called Avon Monteiro.
Oh yeah.
He's passed away a few years ago, but he was there since 1954. East Timor from India.
Yeah.
He's been there, and he often said that he and I hope I'm not giving his words justice, but when he talks about building the church, he would often say, I didn't build this church, the people built this church. And I let them, this is what they, wanted it. And so he was also that first person going in, but I think he saw that you don't just you go with.
Yep. No, that's great, because in his era, there probably weren't so many like him. There were a number of others in other places we've noted that kind of re-established what they knew from their place of origin. And people kind of thought, oh, well, that's nice, but they didn't quite live into it in the way that the sort of the colonizer missionaries might have wanted them to in some ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a salient lesson. Guida, I've asked you to bring along a couple of things that really help you to reflect well on your time away. What have you got?
I've got this.
It's a bangle of some sort.
This is a bangle, and I keep it. It's no longer round because I keep it in this box. It's a bangle made by the little boy that was hiding under the box,
Oh,
and he made one for me, and I believe he made lots of little things. He probably made a spinning top for Sam, or he made it out of next to our house. There were there was a place where the rubbish would be burnt.
All right.
And often the children would like to look through that rubbish to find things to make into toys, and there was you could make a spinning top out of, I think, a spray can. And this is from a cigarette box.
Yeah.
And he showed me by rubbing the cigarette box, you could pull out the foil, and he made me a bangle.
Oh, wow.
And I told him that I would keep it for as long as I could. I said, I'm going to try to keep this forever. Because it's to me, I thought it was beautiful. And it was made with kindness, but it was also, I thought it was ingenious. He could make something from what I saw as a place that was going to be burnt. Like there was something. I said, this is really interesting, like that you're making something here, like in this. And I can think about it now in a different way, is that, like, yes, you look at something and you may not know what's going to come out of it, but everybody can be creative and think of what I can see. Like, it's the old one man's junk is another man's treasure. And maybe whenever I look at something, whether it be a situation, not like I'm hesitant to call anything junk, but the mean is, when you see something that just you can't see a way out, you can find a silver bangle in it. You can find something, but this also represents to me just joy, and a time of happiness, and a time of belonging, and a time of just of feeling like this is the place I should be right now. And then at the end of our journey, Sam and I were presented with rings, gold rings, here by the school director, not the school director, the teacher who was the director at the time.
Yeah.
And we were told that we were married to Bedois, married to our communities. But this is made of a precious metal. And this is made of a cigarette wrapper. But both mean the same thing. And I guess that's what being a volunteer is. You're going to get treated very well sometimes, but sometimes you're going to get treated very well in other ways. And for one person, this may be the way, this is the way the West thinks. And this is the way they thought we should be honored for our time. And we were very humbled, but I was already honored in my first few weeks with this. You see, that's 2 years, but I was honored already.
Yeah, that's that accords very well. I've just finished actually writing a piece for Global Educator, which is coming out in next Monday, and it's it dwells on that idea about what lessons we might learn, and one of the things that I kind of say is that those of us from the apparently developed world only have to consider for a moment our super exploitation of resources and uber consumption generally to know we have much to learn I mean, your boy could see in the rubbish something that was going to express a feeling, and an appreciation, and I don't think we very clearly think about that very much. It does seem to be sometimes has to be the big gift, the impressive, costly gift, or something like that. Um, and for some reason, our dignity seems to be more dependent on consumerism. And it's just such a lesson that it doesn't have to be, that many of our people learn in the placements that they're in, and you've just described that perfectly. Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, it's
And I
great.
keep them both in the same box because
Yeah, good.
I understand the intention behind,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah.
Well, Guida, I'm really thankful that you've been the first to come aboard. You've set a high standard for others who are going to try and talk about their placements, and hopefully yeah, I'm quite sure it's going to be very informative for those who are thinking about engaging in a PALMS overseas placement. I could talk to you for very much longer, and I think you've got a lot more story. But I guess it's the time people have to listen to it all. But I think we've caught some really wonderful essences of engagement in an overseas placement. If there's anything you'd like to say finally, I'd just give you the space.
If your heart and your hands and your feet are calling you to maybe just step out a bit from what is the regular path, listen and try and enjoy and learn and give and have fun. Yeah.
That's brilliant, Guida. Thank you. It's what we are calling these days to reach beyond, and it's exactly what you've done, and it's a great lesson you've given us. Guida, I'll see you on the other side, and we'll hopefully catch up with you soon, when we're able to travel a bit more freely.
Yes.
So, or when you're thinking of coming into New South Wales, come and visit us here in Sydney again.
I will.
Great. Thanks, Guida. Bye-bye.
Bye.